I begin this journey in a small plane flying low over the Amazon. Below me is an ocean of green. Trees stretch in every direction. No roads. No cities. No clear signs of human life. For a long time, this is how the world saw the Amazon. A place untouched by humans. A wild land where large societies could not survive. Early European explorers helped build this idea. When many of them traveled through the Amazon in the 1600s and 1700s, they saw long stretches of empty forest. They found small villages, but not the great cities they expected. So they wrote reports saying the Amazon had always been thinly populated. Their writings shaped history books for hundreds of years. Many scholars believed the soil was too poor for farming. The heavy rains washed away nutrients. Crops could not grow for long. So large populations, they said, were impossible. This idea became known as the pristine myth. The belief that the Amazon was a pure, untouched wilderness before European contact. But not all early explorers said the same thing. In the 1500s, a Spanish explorer named Francisco de Orella traveled down the Amazon River. He and his men reported something very different. They wrote about large riverside towns, dense populations, farms along the riverbanks, warriors defending their territories. Orellana even described long stretches of the river where people lived almost continuously along the banks. At the time, many Europeans believed him, but later explorers did not see these cities. So historians began to think Orellana had exaggerated or imagined what he saw. For centuries, his reports were treated as myths. But in the late 1800s and early 1900s, strange discoveries began to appear. In parts of Brazil and Bolivia, explorers noticed large earth shapes in the ground. Some were perfect circles. Some were squares. Some were long, straight lines. At first, people thought they were natural features. Later, it became clear they were made by humans. Still, these discoveries were scattered and poorly understood. They did not yet change the big idea of the Amazon as an empty wilderness. The real shift began in the late 20th century. Archaeologists started studying soils in the Amazon basin. They found patches of very dark, rich soil. This soil was called terra preta, or black earth. It was full of charcoal, bones, and organic matter. Scientists soon realized this soil was not natural. It was created by humans. And it was very old, hundreds or even thousands of years old. This meant people had once lived in these places long enough to change the soil itself. Then, in the late 1900s and early 2000s, aerial surveys began to reveal something even more surprising. In parts of the Amazon, especially in Brazil and Bolivia, researchers saw geometric earthworks from the sky. These shapes were too precise to be natural. They were perfect circles, large squares, long straight roads, massive ditches and walls. Many of these sites were hidden under forest. They only became visible where trees had been cleared. Then came a major technological breakthrough. LiDAR uses lasers from planes or drones. The lasers pass through gaps in the trees and hit the ground. Computers then build a map of the land without the forest. When archaeologists began using LiDAR in the Amazon, everything changed. Under the green canopy, they started to see road networks, large platforms, settlements connected in patterns, defensive walls, irrigation systems. These were not small villages. Some of them were large, planned settlements. In some areas, the layouts looked like city grids. Historians had to ask a new question. What if the Amazon was never empty? What if it once held millions of people? Some modern estimates now suggest that before European contact, the Amazon basin may have supported several million inhabitants. That would make it one of the most populated regions in the Americas. And yet, by the time Europeans explored it more deeply, many of these societies were already gone. The forest had swallowed their cities. Their roads had become roots and vines. Their homes had turned into mounds of soil. The Amazon was not just a natural wonder. It was also a forgotten human landscape. I now stand in the wide floodplains of Llanos de Moxos in modern-day Bolivia. From the ground, it looks like a quiet, open plain. Grass, water, and distant trees. But when you look from the air, the truth appears. Across this landscape are thousands of raised mounds. Some are small, some are huge. They are connected by long, straight causeways. These raised roads stretch across the plains for kilometers. Archaeologists have studied this region for decades. They now believe it was once home to large, organized societies. The people here built raised living platforms, long road systems, canals, fish ponds, agricultural fields. These were not random structures. They were part of a planned landscape. During the rainy season, much of this land floods. Without planning, farming here would be very hard. So these people raised the ground. They built long fields above the flood level. They dug canals to control water. They created fish ponds for food. This system allowed them to produce large amounts of food, enough to support big populations. Some areas in the Llanos de Moxos show networks of settlements spread across huge distances. Not just one village, but many, connected together. This suggests a complex society with planning and coordination. Next, I travel north to Ecuador, to the Apano Valley. Here, recent LiDAR scans have revealed something astonishing. Under the forest canopy are the remains of a large urban network. Researchers have found over 1,000 platforms, long, straight roads, large central areas, residential zones. Some of these roads stretch for many kilometers. They connect one settlement to another in a clear pattern. This is not a scattered village system. It is a planned urban landscape. Some platforms are very large. These may have been ceremonial or political centers. Others are smaller, likely homes for families. The layout suggests social organization. Different areas for living, rituals, and gatherings. Archaeologists studying pottery and tools from these sites have found signs of trade. Some materials came from far away. This means these societies were connected to wider trade networks. They were not isolated. I walk across one of the platforms. The ground is flat and firm, but it is clearly raised above the surrounding land. This was once a foundation for buildings, maybe wooden houses with thatched roofs. I try to imagine the scene long ago. People walking along the raised roads, smoke rising from cooking fires, children playing near the edges of the platforms, traders arriving with baskets of goods. These cities were not made of stone like those of the Andes. They were built from earth and wood. That is one reason they disappeared. So is wood rots. Earth blends back into the ground. The forest grows over everything. But the shapes remain. And now, with new technology, those shapes are telling their story across the Amazon basin, from Bolivia to Brazil to Ecuador. The evidence keeps growing. The forest that once seemed empty now appears to have been full of life, cities, roads, farms, communities, a whole world hidden under the trees. I am walking through a small clearing in the Amazon. The air is heavy. The ground is soft under my boots. A local farmer kneels down and scoops up a handful of dark soil. It is almost black, rich, full of life. He tells me this soil is not natural. It was made by the people who lived here long ago. This soil is called terra preta, or black earth. It is one of the most important clues to the Amazon's hidden past. For many years, scientists believed the Amazon soil was poor. Heavy rains wash away nutrients. Without constant care, crops fail. That is why scholars once thought large societies could not survive here. But terra preta tells a different story. This soil was created by people mixing charcoal, food scraps, animal bones, plant waste, broken pottery. Over time, the soil became very fertile. Unlike normal Amazon soil, it did not lose its strength quickly. Some patches of terra preta are hundreds of years old, yet they are still rich enough to grow crops today. This shows that ancient Amazonian people did not just live in the forest. They improved it. They understood their environment. They knew how to make poor soil productive. I traveled to another site in the lowlands of Bolivia. From the ground, it looks like long ridges of earth. But from the air, the pattern becomes clear. There are hundreds of raised fields. They stretch across the land like lines on a map. An archaeologist explains the system to me. During the rainy season, the land floods. If crops grow at ground level, they drown. So the people raised the soil into long mounds. They planted crops on top. Water filled the channels between the ridges. This system did three things. It protected crops from flooding. It stored water for dry periods. It improved soil fertility. In some regions, these raised fields cover thousands of hectares. That means they could support large populations. This was not simple farming. This was engineering. I also see canals dug into the earth. Some are straight. Some curve through the land. These canals likely helped control water. Some may have also been used to move small boats. Near the canals, archaeologists have found old ponds. These may have been used for fish farming. This means people were not only growing crops, they were also managing fish as a food source. The more I travel, the more I see signs of careful planning. In some areas, useful trees grow in clusters. Fruit trees, nut trees, trees with medicinal bark. Scientists studying these areas now believe some parts of the Amazon forests are not fully wild. They may be the result of centuries of human management. What looks like natural forest today may once have been a giant garden. These ancient people did not cut down the forest completely. They shaped it slowly. Over time, they created a landscape that gave them food, wood, medicine, and shelter, and they did it in a way that lasted for generations. But their lives were not only about survival. At several sites, archaeologists have found pottery with detailed designs. Some are painted, some are carved. The patterns are careful and repeated. This suggests shared symbols and beliefs. At another site, I see small ornaments made from stone and shell. Some are shaped like animals, others like human faces. This shows art. It shows identity. It shows culture. Some earthworks are aligned with the sun. Their shapes and directions match sunrise or sunset at certain times of the year. This suggests the people were watching the sky. They may have used the sun and stars to track seasons. This would help them know when to plant and harvest. It may also have played a role in rituals. Many of these societies likely had strong spiritual beliefs. The forest, rivers, animals, and sky may all have been part of their worldview. Large mounds may have been used for ceremonies. Leaders, priests, or elders may have gathered people there for rituals. These were not small, scattered tribes. They were organized societies with farming systems, road networks, ceremonial centers, trade connections, shared beliefs. They built a way of life that fit the rainforest, and they did it without destroying the environment around them. I am standing on top of an old earth platform deep in the forest. Around me, there are only trees, no houses, no farms, no people. If this place was once full of life, what caused it to fade away? Why did these societies disappear? One of the strongest theories is disease. When Europeans arrived in the Americas, they brought new illnesses. These diseases were common in Europe, but completely new to the native people. Some of the most deadly were smallpox, measles, influenza, typhus. The people of the Americas had no immunity. Their bodies had never faced these diseases before. In many places, entire villages died within a few years. Historians estimate that in some regions, up to 80 or 90% of the population died after European contact. Even places that Europeans never reached directly were affected. How? Through trade routes? If a sick person traveled along a river or road, the disease could spread to new communities. The Amazon's rivers were like highways. They connected settlements across long distances. A disease could move quickly from one place to another. In just a few decades, large populations could collapse. A busy city could become empty. Farms would be left untended. Roads would fall into disuse. Buildings would rot. The forest would slowly take back the land. But disease may not have been the only cause. Climate change may also have played a role. Scientists study the past using tree rings, lake sediments, ice cores, soil layers. These records show changes in rainfall over time. Some studies suggest that certain parts of the Amazon faced long dry periods in the past. If the rains failed for several years, crops would suffer. Food shortages could lead to migration, conflict, social breakdown. A society already weakened by disease could collapse more easily. Under these pressures, internal conflict is another possible factor. As populations grow, competition for land and resources increases. Different groups may fight for farmland, water sources, trade routes, political power. War can damage cities, disrupt farming, and weaken leadership. If several problems happen at once, disease, drought, and conflict, the effects can be devastating. But there is still much we do not know. These societies did not leave written histories like the Maya or the Romans. We do not have long texts or royal records. Most of what we know comes from soil analysis, pottery, fragments, stone tools, settlement patterns, human remains. It is like trying to understand a story with only a few pages left. Every new discovery changes the picture. In some areas, archaeologists find signs of sudden abandonment. In others, they see gradual decline. Some settlements may have survived longer than others. Some may have merged with smaller communities deeper in the forest. As I sit on the edge of the platform, I try to imagine the final days here. Maybe a sickness spread through the town. Maybe the crops failed. Maybe families left one by one. The roads grew quiet. The fires went out. The songs and voices faded. Then the forest returned. Seeds fell into the empty streets. Trees grew through old houses. Roots broke apart the platforms. Within a few centuries, the cities vanished from sight. By the time Europeans traveled deeper into the Amazon, the great settlements were gone. All they saw was forest. And so the myth of the untouched Amazon was born. But now, the ground is telling a different story. A story of cities, farmers, engineers, and cultures that once filled this vast green world. I am back in a research lab the room is cold. Computers hum all around me. On the screens are maps of the forest. But these are not normal maps. They come from LiDAR scans, light sent from aircraft, bouncing off the ground, showing what lies under the trees. At first, the screen just looks like lines and shapes. But then the researcher zooms in. I see straight roads, perfect circles, long platforms, square outlines of buildings. These are not natural shapes. These are settlements, the researcher says. People built these. More shapes appear every year. More roads, more platforms, Mari towns. The story of the Amazon is changing. For a long time, history books said this region was almost empty before Europeans arrived. They said only small, scattered tribes lived here. People moving through the forest, never building large towns. Many believed the soil was too poor, the jungle too thick, the rivers too wild. They said no large civilization could survive here. But now, the maps tell a different story. Archaeologists are finding signs of large, organized societies. Some areas show networks of roads stretching for miles. Some show towns arranged in patterns like a planned city. In parts of the upper Amazon, entire landscapes were shaped by human hands. This changes how we think about the past. For years, complex civilizations were linked only to famous places. Andes, Mesoamerica, Nile, Mesopotamia. But now we see that complex societies also existed deep inside the Amazon. The Amazon is not an easy place to build a civilization. The soil is thin. Heavy rains wash nutrients away. Plants grow fast in choke fields. But these people found a way. They created something called terra preta, dark, rich soil made by mixing charcoal, food waste, and plant remains. Even today, this soil is more fertile than the natural ground around it. They also built raised fields to grow crops above floodwaters. They dug canals to control water flow. They planted orchards of useful trees. Instead of clearing the forest, they shaped it. Some researchers now believe parts of the Amazon are not fully natural. They may be the result of thousands of years of human planning. A forest that looks wild but was once a kind of giant garden. In places like Kuikugu, in the Upper Shingu, archaeologists have found signs of large towns, not with stone temples, not with pyramids, but with earthworks, roads, and wooden buildings. The houses are gone. The wood rotted away long ago, but the shapes of the towns remain. Circular villages, straight roads, large central plazas. Some may have held thousands of people. This was not a scattered forest population. This was organized life. Then something changed. When Europeans arrived in the Americas, they brought diseases, smallpox, measles, flu. These diseases spread faster than armies, faster than news. Many Amazonian societies had no immunity. Entire villages died. Some towns were abandoned. Fields turned back into forest. Roads vanished under roots and leaves. By the time later explorers reached these areas, the cities were already gone. They saw only jungle. And so they believed there had never been anything else. Now, new tools are changing that belief. LiDAR is one of the most powerful planes fly over the forest. They send millions of laser pulses down through the canopy. Some light hits leaves, some reaches the ground. Computers remove the trees from the data. What remains is the shape of the land. And under that land, we see the past. But LiDAR is not the only tool. Researchers also use satellites to track old roads, drones to scan hidden clearings, soil science to find ancient farms. Many parts of the Amazon have never been scanned. Huge areas remain a mystery. In the lab, I ask one of the young researchers a simple question. What do you think is still out there? He smiles more than we can imagine. He believes there are more cities, larger road networks, entire cultural regions still unknown. He says we are only at the beginning. Some call the Amazon the next great archaeological frontier. Not a desert, not a mountain, but a forest that swallowed its own history. I travel with a small team into the forest. They are young, students, and early career scientists. They carry drones, laptops, and small digging tools. At night, they sit around a lantern. They talk about what they might find. One says, we could discover a city bigger than anything we know. Another says, we might change what people think about the Amazon forever. They are excited. Not just about the past, but about the future. They say these old societies may teach us how to live with the forests, not against it. At the end of my journey, I stand at the edge of the trees. The canopy moves in the wind. Birds call from above. Insects buzz in the heat. To most periply, this still looks like pure wilderness. But now, I see it differently. I see old roads under the soil, forgotten farms, lost towns, voices of people who once lived here. The Amazon is not just a natural wonder. It is also a human story. A story of cities, knowledge, and survival. And we are only just starting to read it.